I want to share with you a secret. The secret is homeschoolers don't always like to homeschool. I've been homeschooling for a long time, and about every February I hit the wall where I'm over it. I'm done and I'm over it. February is like you got through January, yay, congratulations, you made it, but you still have a long way to go. It's kind of like the third lap in a mile race. Yeah, that's February for me, and every time we get to February, I struggle, and I have to really pray about trying to stay positive, and I have to find new ways to shake up my homeschool. And so if you are a reluctant homeschooler, I want to share with you something today that I have used that has always worked for us. And this is the essence of homeschooling. What I'm about to tell you is the difference in homeschooling and traditional schooling. Homeschooling is not doing traditional schooling at home. There are some necessary evils that one must do in homeschool. To me, that would be math or grammar. Those are things that must happen, and they are just boring most of the time, meaning that it can't just be all fun and games and whatever you want to do. There has to be some continuity, and there has to be just some digging in and getting that hard work done. And that is a good thing for children to do things that they don't like to do. And quite frankly, it's a good thing for me to do things that I don't like to do too. And so you just smile and make the most of it, and you just get done what you need to get done. And for some kids, those subjects are very easy, and it's not such a fight. For other kids who have some problems, and I have kids on both ends of that spectrum there, it's not so much fun, and it's not so much fun for you, and it'll bring you right to your knees on the floor, and that's no joke. But homeschooling is not traditional school. It isn't. It's different. And this is the thing that makes a difference. So if you are suddenly homeschooling because you're in a pandemic, I hope that this brings you a lot of encouragement, and I hope that this helps you, and that is the purpose in me making this video today. Or if you are a homeschooler and you've kind of hit the wall, I hope that this encourages you too. So the holy grail of homeschooling to me is the unit study. So I will briefly describe to you what a unit study is. A unit study is when you pick a topic of interest and you just study it in every way that you possibly can think of. By writing about it, by reading about it, by talking about it, by doing art projects about it, until you've exhausted it to the point that you don't want to talk about it anymore. That's pretty much what a unit study is. I'm going to give you an example of a unit study that I did with my children in an attempt to give you an idea about what they are. I have tried to describe this on this video about 10 times. I've had to start over. And I think that the best way to describe a unit study is simply to tell you about one that I did with my children. So we've done a lot of them, but the one that's probably the most memorable to me because of its depth and its recent history is when we studied the Roman Empire. Now I'm going to give you a list. This is not an exhaustive list of what we did. We did a lot we spent a long time on the Roman Empire. We chose to spend 3 months studying the Roman Empire. There are no rules for how long you study in a unit study. If it's a topic you want to learn just a little bit about, you take 2 or 3 days to study it. If it's something you really enjoy, you take 3 months to study it, or a year. We've done unit studies that have been a year long before. It just depends on if everybody is enjoying themselves. That's kind of what it depends upon. So I'm going to give you what we did with the Roman Empire, okay? The first thing we did was we studied the general history of Rome. I used at least 4 textbooks for this. I used Christian material, and I used secular history books as well. YouTube videos, documentaries, some primary source documents. That's what I used to study the history of Rome. For the science portion of the unit study, we studied the aqueducts in Rome, and we studied how the roads were built. We also studied how concrete was invented, because that's from the Roman Empire. And we studied volcanoes when Pompeii exploded. We studied architecture. We looked at how the Romans built their buildings, which was different than what the Greeks did. And then we drove around town and we looked for examples of Roman architecture in some of the historical buildings in town and some of the newer buildings. It's surprising how much of that you find. For religion, we studied that exhaustively because that was our primary interest. We studied the Jews, we studied Jesus, we studied Paul, we studied Constantine, and the beginnings of Catholicism. For literature, we read a book called The Bronze Bow that was written, it's historical fiction, written about Rome at the time of Jesus. And we also watched Julius Caesar by William Shakespeare on video. We did not watch the whole thing. That was long. We were not enjoying the whole thing, but we got the gist of it. For writing, my kids wrote The Bronze Bow, which is a wonderful book, by the way. It ends very abruptly. And so I had the kids, each of them, write a story about how they think the next chapter would have gone in the book. And they were fantastic. I was so excited. That was something that this assignment revealed to me, that my kids are pretty good writers. I was very surprised. Now, my kids at this time were 15 down to 8. And my 8-year-old couldn't write very well. So he dictated to me and I wrote, and he drew. So do you see, you're getting the feel for the unit study. Now we're going to talk about this when I'm done explaining everything else we did. I've got a list over here I keep referencing so I don't forget something. Sociology. So we studied Roman law. We studied what a woman's role was in the Roman Empire, how slaves were treated in the Roman Empire, and children. And let's see, and the different mistakes of the Roman rulers and how it impacted their society. Oh, we studied gladiators, like so much. We so exhausted gladiators because I have 3 boys and I have 1 girl. But the 3 boys in particular were really super interested in gladiators. And so we studied that. I had them each make up their own gladiator costume and then draw the perfect gladiator if they were going to draw anything. And we drew a lot of comparisons to gladiators, to our present day sports figures, and to Marvel comic heroes, and how you see that in fact and in fiction. You see it both. Roman numerals. We talked about Roman numerals. We learned all about Roman soldiers, what they were, how many, what a centurion was, and how many soldiers were under him, and all of these things. We studied about their battle techniques. We studied about the kind of shoes that they wore and the shields that they carried and all the unique things about the Roman Empire. We also studied, let's see, I wrote all this down because I knew I wouldn't remember, all about the government of Rome, which was a republic, just like the United States is a republic. The expansion of their empire in other lands. We learned about Nero, Seneca, when the empire split. And then finally we learned about the Franks and the Vandals and the Saxons, and the replacement of Catholicism as the governing body, really, of that period in history after the fall of the Roman Empire. That is what we covered, and that's not the whole list. We covered a lot of things. Oh, I also had my kids write, I had my older 2 kids write an essay. One wrote about what he thought contributed to the fall of Rome, and the other one wrote about the Roman gods and goddesses and how they compare to God. Okay, so I had them write different essays. So that's what the unit study is. A unit study is where you take this subject matter, which for us was Rome, and you incorporate all of the things that a child needs to learn: science, history, writing, art, government, sociology, all of those things, but you're doing it in the content, in the context of one subject. So it's sort of like open chain exercises where you use more than one muscle at a time. It's not like you're just getting on the weight machine and you're pushing forward. It's where you have things where you have to use your whole body to perform the exercise, because it strengthens multiple things, and that's what unit studies do. So what makes unit studies so cool? There's a couple things. One is that if you have a lot of kids in different ages, you can vary the assignments based upon what your subject is. So for example, my writing assignments for my little guy were super, super simple. But for my child who's a pretty good critical thinker, I required a much higher standard of him. But they were both doing writing at the same time. The art was the same way. My daughter is incredibly artistic, and I had her do an art project that was pretty involved. Where my boys, they like to draw. They like to draw comics and things about what they learn. So I had them do that. And so you can really play to a child's strengths. The other thing is the weaknesses that your children have are a lot more tolerable if it's in a subject matter that they are having fun learning about. They're not so reluctant to write. I could not believe boys in particular really struggle with writing. I think most boys really do not want to write. And when my kids got to write the end of that book, I could not believe how well they did and how much they wrote. They wrote quite a bit. I was very surprised. The other thing about unit studies that's really cool is that it sometimes pulls out a talent that you didn't really know that your kid had, and they didn't really know that they had it either, because there really hasn't been a time to exercise it. If you are like me, you are scared of glitter and glue and paint, and you don't really want them in your carpet, and so you don't pull them out that often. But a unit study really encourages those things, and there's a reason to do it, even though there doesn't need to be a reason to do it. But sometimes when you have a reason to do it, you're more likely to like indulge in an art project. And so it really pulls that talent out of that child. So you're probably thinking to yourself, well, that's fine, but I don't know anything about the Roman Empire. Or that's fine, maybe you do know about the Roman Empire, but you think your kids would be really bored. Well, I'm going to tell you another secret. I didn't know 90% of that stuff about the Roman Empire until I had to teach it. So what that looks like is this. When you're getting ready for a unit study, there's many ways that you can take an approach. First of all, if you go on Pinterest and you just type in unit study and a subject matter, you will get all manner of information. I mean, it's fantastic what's out there. If you go to Teachers Pay Teachers, which is a website I like to use a lot, where you're paying a teacher or a homeschooling parent who has designed curriculum for a subject matter, you can look something up by subject and come up with some pretty good stuff to use also. There are also curriculums that you can find if you research through a lady named Kathy Duffy, and I'll try to put her information below this video, and through a company called Rainbow Resource. There are whole curriculums that are just unit studies that have either just ideas that you have to get your materials, or sometimes you can just buy an entire kit and you have everything that you need at your fingertips. But the way I did a unit study was a little bit different, and what I did was I just studied myself. I just picked up some history books. One of my favorite history books is right here. This is a public school history book that I got from the thrift store when the public school changed their history curriculum. I like to use Christian resources. I have a lot of those, but I also like to use secular resources because I want to make sure that I'm getting good information on. I want it to be balanced, and so that's what I choose to do. So I just sort of immersed myself in the topic about a month before I had to start teaching it. So in my evening times when we would be watching TV with, sitting on the couch, my husband and I would watch documentaries on the Roman Empire, or I would pick up something to read and take some notes on it. And as I got clarity, a plan started to form where I could teach this subject matter. And so I was about 2 to 3 weeks ahead of my children when I began to teach, and they would catch up to me really fast. Sometimes I had them independently research and do a presentation on part of this unit study. So what happens though, here's what makes this fun. This is what makes it fun. You are spending so much time learning with your children. The key to being a good teacher is that you must be a good learner. And if you can learn, you can explain this stuff to your children in a way that they understand it. So when you're coming alongside your child and you're learning something new and you're excited about what you're learning, it just makes it so awesome. It's so awesome. And then you can really begin to have some good discussions with your children about the subject matter at hand because they are invested. Once they have something to hang that knowledge onto, they're a lot more apt to pick it up and run with it and really enjoy it. I think a lot of times the way that we approach learning with kids is everything is really compartmentalized. And really life is not that compartmentalized. I mean, you realize that when you become an adult. Your skill sets all kind of overlap and run together, whether you're at work or you're at home or you're wherever. So I think that we need to treat our kids that way too. We just need to kind of throw them into the subject and see what they can do with it. And we had great discussions on comparing society today to Rome. And there are so many, even with this pandemic that we're in right now, the Romans outsourced most of their agriculture to the outlying areas and had all the food trucked into Rome, which caused a lot of problems. And you think about the fact that our grocery stores are now out of products in big cities, and where are you going to go get things? History does repeat itself, and you can learn a lot by studying history. You can learn a lot about what was good and what was bad, and you can have great discussions with your children. And it is a way to incorporate your values into their life without it just being about your values. It's being about your values being exposed in real circumstances that really actually happened. And you can watch the wheels turn in their brain, and they start coming to their own conclusions too. So, immersion in this subject helps things stick. And so the irony is, so I had to learn ahead of my kids. I had to throw myself in. But because they're far younger than me, they remember a lot more than me. If I were to bring one of my kids onto this video, there's a lot more that they could tell you than what I could tell you, because I just don't remember as much. It just doesn't stick for me as much as it does for them. So I would encourage you to use this time to explore a unit study with your children. You could do a unit study on anything at all. And this is like I said, this is what real homeschooling is. Real homeschooling is throwing yourself into a subject and diving as deep as you want to go and making it fun. And so I'll tell you what I'm going to start doing very soon. We are in the middle of remodeling our house because we're going to be moving. And so we need to put our house up for sale. And so the house is sort of in disarray right now. There's not a lot of order. We have some whole rooms that are closed off in our house. As soon as that gets wrapped up, which should be pretty soon here, we have been doing geography all year. My younger two are doing geography, and my older two are doing geography at a high school level. And I am bored to tears because we are not having fun. I'm not having fun. They're not having fun. And so I have decided that we are going to, they have finished the book, the textbook of what they were doing, but I am going to scrap the other plans that we had, which were basically a lot of worksheets, and we together are going to do a geography unit study where we study a continent and the countries on that continent, and we make food from there, and we learn the capitals, and I have a board game about capitals and, different countries and land masses and all of that kind of stuff, and I give them a prize if they win the game, and have them find news, current events that are happening in each of those countries, and really just throw ourselves into it because we are bored. We are bored. I am bored. And if the teacher ain't happy, ain't nobody happy in homeschool. So I would strongly encourage you to look into doing a unit study. Like I said earlier, go on Pinterest, go online, do whatever you have to do, and find a subject matter. And here's the thing, if you are a person who's recently been quarantined with your children and you were not ever anticipating teaching them at home, you are in a blessed position because you have awesome work experience to draw upon to do a unit study. Like if you're a nurse and you're not a frontline nurse, but you actually get to be home with your kids, oh my goodness, like you could talk about the disease process and germs and all manner of things that are really pertinent to what's going on right now. And that is going to stick with them. If you are a computer person, you have this opportunity to do a unit study on a computer and maybe all the hardware and how it works and the history of the computer. I mean, there's just so many things that you can do with it. They're so exciting. And you will have fun because you will learn things too. Now, I haven't liked all the unit studies. There are certain subjects that are just boring. But unit studies that I almost always enjoy them. Like the other one we did that was super long, was a year long. We spent a year on the solar system, one whole year on the solar system. In addition to our math and our grammar and usually another subject. And then we would do the solar system. And I was dreading it. I told my husband, I said, I don't want to do this. But the kids wanted to do it. So I'm like, okay, Well, I loved it. I loved it. I ended up absolutely loving it. So don't be afraid to try a subject. If you think you're going to hate it, only do it like 3 days tops and see and take it from there. You don't have to go any further. You just go a couple days and you see how good you do. But I'm telling you, if you are really struggling with doing the school at home thing, this will jazz up your life. It will make it way more exciting than what it has been. So I hope that this helps you. If you have an idea for unit study that you want to try, please leave it in the comment below because I'm interested to see what you want to pick. All right. Have a blessed day. Bye-bye.